Few things are as fun as blowing apart everything with machine guns, and video games seem to know that. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today we're gonna look at gallery shooting video games.
Second Opinion Games.
First, we gotta explain what a gallery shooter really is here. Basically, you have to have a crosshair on the screen and a character. Now, the character could be just moving side to side in a single plane, or the screen could be scrolling to the left or to the right, as well as you could just be running into the background. But basically, as long as there's a crosshair, tons of bullets to dodge, and a character in front of you to control, then that's a gallery shooter. Wild Guns is probably the most common game people talk about when they're thinking of gallery shooting. You could choose from either a Clint Eastwood lookalike character or a hotter version of Annie Oakley. I usually pick Annie here. Now, she also has a freeze laser lasso that can freeze the robots, and that's what you're fighting here in the Old West, of course. Freaking robots, because you can't just be shooting up people all willy-nilly, and robots are far cooler to fight against. And there will be some huge boss battles here. If you manage to get past the very first stage, well, then it will open up to choose your own stage to go on next. You could have a high-speed train event, which is definitely welcome in my book. I do enjoy myself a good train level, or you can find yourself in a desert or an ammo depot. The tight controls are what really makes the game shine. If you have a bullet heading towards you, you could jump out of the way and never let off the fire button. Or you could let off the fire button, move a little bit quicker, and possibly do a jump. If people could throw dynamite, you could also throw it back. If you shoot the bullets out of the air enough, well, then you will fill up your Vulcan cannon meter, and then you'll become invincible and just mow down everything. You also have a screen-clearing blast of explosions that you could just unleash upon your enemies, and this is really good for taking down bosses. Overall, this is the tightest gallery shooter that was ever made, and that's probably one of the reasons why it was re-released for modern consoles to this day, because it was just so good, it couldn't just stay on the Super Nintendo. But that really wasn't the first time I got introduced to gallery shooters. No, the first time I ever seen it was Cabal on the NES. Now, you are an army guy, and you have to blow apart everything in a stinking level. Tapping the A button quickly will launch some grenades, which are much needed for some over-the-top explosions, but most of the time you're just going to be shooting everything in sight. There's a percentage meter at the bottom, and when it gets full, you move on to the next stage. Also, this is 1 to 2 players here, and the difficulty doesn't ramp up when you add a second player, so if there's another one of you, then the game is super easy. But if it's just you by yourself, it's unbelievably difficult, and that's because bullets just fill the stinking screen all the stinking time. And it's really hard to dodge them, because once the bullets are on screen, well, then they can hit you. It doesn't matter how far in the background the bullet stinking is, it's just gonna kill you dead. Luckily, this is a moderately fun game that will keep you pushing forward, and the challenge is very necessary to give you that sense of accomplishment when you get the job done. When I got my Sega Genesis, one of the first games I also picked up was Dynamite Duke. Now, this is a particularly cool game, as the game scrolls continuously to the side. Also, you have a machine gun, and you have a punch and a kick. Sometimes people will jump right in your way, and then you have to punch and kick the crap out of them. And there's also one more trick up your sleeve. If you hold down the punch button, you could unleash a massive dynamite punch that will level nearly everything on the screen. Somehow tanks aren't your biggest enemies. No, it's usually fat guys that you have to fight against. They could be flamethrower fat guys or just bionic fat guys, but you're always going to be fighting a lot of chubbies, and you have to take them out with your dynamite punches. Also, I really like how your character is see-through in the chest, and I gotta say, the Sega Genesis did a great job with this. Let's just do a slow transition over to the arcade version, and we'll find ourselves that the arcade version is nearly identical. However, it is a bit harder because you have to put in tons of quarters to play through the game. In the arcade, I beat this game with about $5 and change in my pocket, and I did it wearing roller skates at one of those roller rink arcades. So yeah, I was much better at playing video games than I ever got to be roller skating. While we're on the topic of the arcade games, let's jump over to Japan. Here is SWAT Police, and it's just again a gallery shooter with a couple more tricks up its sleeve, like the fact that you can collect money as you play through the game and upgrade your character as you play through it. The bosses are still over the top, and this is one blast to play. And if that didn't do it for you, why not try out the game Riot? Now, I'm sure the name is actually quite different, but that's the only word I can make out on this title screen. Now, if you thought this was your regular shoot-'em-up arcade gallery shooter, well, then you'd be sadly mistaken, because this time you have to shoot people in the foreground with a different button. Yeah, you're continuously changing which way you're facing, shooting people in the front and in the back, and you can even pick up power-ups along the way. But this gets really confusing, and it makes your brain start to melt after a while. The enemies are probably the coolest part of this. I always thought that they looked like something right out of my G.I. Joes that I used to play with it. Maybe it was just the red and blue color scheme, but it always made me want to get excited to play with my G.I. Joes again. Which leads me to the G.I. Joe video game in the arcades. You get to pick from Duke, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, or some other dude, and you just run into the background, completely mowing down everything. Obviously, I like Scarlet the most. Duke is also pretty good, but Snake Eyes still says Yo Joe when you put in the freaking quarter to play as him, and that really doesn't feel right. Also, he doesn't use swords at all. He just sort of runs forward with his machine gun, which is kind of what the game's all about, but why even have Snake Eyes as a character at this point if that's all he's gonna do? No, Scarlet is by far the best. Now, you can pick up a machine gun and mow everything down, and when you finally get hit, you lose that machine gun, which is really unfortunate because you're gonna be banging the crap out of the buttons trying to blow apart everything. There's also missiles that you could use, and you have to use them very liberally, especially blowing apart all the tanks. One of the things I liked about the most about this game is the way that the board just scrolls forward at all times, and the background just continuously gets bigger as you run towards your goal. And there's only a few levels in this game, but you're going to recognize all of the G.I. Joe toys that are in this game, and all the different characters that you're going to fight along the way. This is pretty much the best G.I. Joe experience you could have in video game form. But G.I. Joe wasn't the only ones to do this. How about Rambo 3? Now, of course, this makes total sense for Rambo to be a running, gunning machine, tearing apart everything. If you play second player, then you can play as Troutman 2, his trusty colonel friend. And when you do complete a level, you might see Troutman just long enough as he jumps into a mini bike or into a Jeep with you, and you guys drive off into the sunset together. How romantic. This might not be as good or as polished as a G.I. Joe game, but it certainly has something that I love, and that's blowing apart everything with machine guns and missiles. But let's jump out of the arcade. After all, gallery shooters have to be made for a lot of other consoles too, right? Right? Well, let's look at the Sega Master System and the video game Dead Angel. You play as a ghost with a machine gun, and you can float around. And this is probably the worst gallery shooter I think I ever played. Structurally, it seems alright. However, the frame rate is like 5 frames per second here, and it's really hard to avoid gunfire. Now, I can clear a couple of levels, but it's just rough around the edges, really bad. Maybe if this game was remade today, they could do something more with it, but as this is, man, it's just not worth playing or collecting. Say you want to play something a little bit more like Wild Guns. Well, I recommend checking out The Great Battle 5. This is a exclusive to Japan Super Nintendo, aka Super Famicom game, where you get to play as either robots or cyborgs or mechs or something in a game that's very much like Wild Guns, complete with a Wild West theme and everything. Also, there are different characters that you could switch back and forth between. You have your standard character who moves really fast but is a bit weaker, and the other character moves a little bit slower and has a more powerful shot. Also, they mix in some 2D Mega Man X style gameplay in here as well, and this is a terrific game from start to finish. However, it starts off really difficult and it never lets up from there, probably because this is the 5th game in this series. Heck, the bullets even match the color of the the background, which makes them nearly impossible to see. So if you could even get started in this game, you will have a great time, because holy crap, this is just one of the best imports ever made. But say you didn't want to import a game and you want the ultimate gallery shooter. Well, you probably should have bought Wild Guns then, but instead, this is my favorite gallery shooter. Zombie Panic in Wonderland. Now, this is a WiiWare game, but you can pick it up on your 3DS, and I heard they even remade the game rather poorly onto the Switch. But the Wii is where it is played best, because the Wiimote is great at targeting your enemies. Also, you can play as the hottest Snow White in the history of hot Snow Whites, and you could blow apart everything. The whole game is over in just about an hour if you manage to play it perfectly, but you won't. You will die again and again. Luckily, there are infinite continues. You also get plenty of things to help you out along the way, with different missiles, a machine gun that is supercharged that mows down everything, and a freaking flamethrowers. The bosses here are also freaking huge, and I love the Halloween theme throughout. There's even a sort of a Christmas level here, and you could fight Prince Charming himself as the end boss of the game. The whole story is just crazy, with different dwarves being scented with pheromones that turn everyone into zombies, and it just doesn't make sense at all. And did I mention there's a hot Snow White here, and the more times you play through the game and beat it, you could unlock different characters and even a different stage. Yes, this is the ultimate gallery shooter of all times, and is certainly one that I think should go down in history, especially because it was left in history because it was left on the WiiWare, which shut down, which is pretty sad. And I absolutely love all of these gallery shooters, but of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. I had a great time making this video, and gallery shooters are just some of my favorite video games, and I didn't even know that that's what they were called. I just always called them games that are like Wild Guns. So when I found out, I just had to make this. Also, I had a couple people asking me to make this video, and I just love gallery shooters. So Zombie and Panic in Wonderland really is one of my favorites. Wild Guns is probably the best of the entire genre, but what other home console gallery shooters did I completely miss here? I know there's quite a few in the arcades, and I probably could have talked forever about those, but I really have to know, are there any on the PC Engine that I might have missed over? I know there had to be a couple more on the Sega Genesis, and I wasn't going to include Dick Tracy in that. That's really its own thing. So, hey, leave me a comment down below, and make sure you talk to other people down below as well, because I'm trying to set up a community here, and I want to keep this channel growing. So until later, I will see you again, guys.